4-degree below flow. What's the New York? You know what we're talking about. Under the tundra, the glacier, the iceberg tips. Check it, yo. Fizz is chillin', Buff is chillin'. What more can I say? Hot penguin, that's what you get. Got it good. 4-degree below flow, rock the hook. Right, 5-degree below flow, rock the hood. 10-degree below flow. Landed in the falls in the disco decade.
Alright, welcome to another episode of Eazystar's Variety Society. Today we're going to talk about the Electoral College and how it is outdated. How am I making such claims that the Electoral College is outdated? Well, my first claim would be that the original reasons that were used to decide between a direct popular vote and an indirect electoral college, they're invalid now. And I'll go through those a little later. And another reason I can make that claim just off the top is of the 5 elections where the popular vote winner lost the election, it's happened 5 times. 2 of those times have happened within the last 16 years. So it's time to look at that. You know what I mean? That's an eye-opener. And also, there's just the point of view that it was never in date. It was never in the best interest of the people, and it should have always been one vote for one person because it's just one national president. So, I mean, let the chip fall where they may. Your vote gonna count regardless. You know what I mean? So, those are the reasons why I think we can look into this, and then I think we should look into what the Electoral College is before we proceed, any further as well. And I'm going to start it from another angle. Everybody usually breaks it down from the top. I'm going to break it down from the bottom with the people. So, the census. Every 10 years, the United States takes a census, and that census allows us to know the population of the country. Not only that, it allows us to know the populations of each state. And using a formula, House of Representative reps are distributed proportionately by population to each state. And that's also an additional one for Washington, D.C., with a total of 435 reps in all. Now that's just for the 435 House of Representatives. We're not talking about the Senate yet. So, in the past, we want to stick on this 435 number for a second. In the past, the House of Representatives were chosen strictly by population. It was strictly in proportion to your population. So, it was lower than 435 before. It got higher and higher and higher, and it reached the point of 435, and it was decided that they would limit it right there. And what that does is it gives an advantage to the smaller states. I want to throw that in there right quick. We're going to touch on that a little later. So we're still talking about what the Electoral College is, and with census and how they choose House of Representatives. I'm going to tell you, tie it together later. The electoral votes are equal, or the electors, how can I say this? The electoral seats is probably the best way to say it. They're equal to the total of House seats and Senate seats. So, and then you add Washington, D.C., they have 2 Senate and 1 House of Representatives. So that gets you to the total of 538 electors. Now, if a candidate wins the popular vote in a state, they get all of that state's electoral seats. With the exception of Maine and Nebraska, and that state, I think it's more fair, even though you're still using indirect. But, if candidate A wins 1, 2, 3 sections of that state, and candidate B wins 1, 2, 3, 4 sections of that state, the electors are split up according to what they want. So it's a little bit more fair in Maine and Nebraska. So Each candidate has a group of electors in each state, and generally these electors are chosen by the political parties in each state via party convention or party leaders just choosing them. So, I win New York, I'm a Democrat. I win New York State. New York State is totally Democratic state. Where are the electors in New York State coming from? Well, say for instance, New York State Democratic Convention Party. They had a New York State Democratic Party convention, right? And at that convention, they would choose the electors there, and those electors are pledged. Because the actual Electoral College vote is somewhere in January. It's not in November. It's somewhere in the future or beyond that. So when that time comes, they're pledged to vote Democrat for the state. You know, all those electors are going to be, they're pledged to vote Democrat come the Electoral College election. And the candidate who receives the majority of the electoral seats, they win the total election. So the popular vote is used in each state to choose the electors. And that's pretty much how the Electoral College works. Now I want to get into some of the reasons why I'm stating that this is outdated. And I think what we should do is look at things from the perspective of the original framers of the Constitution. Most times we look at them as, you know, down for the people, whistling Yankee Doodle Dandy, they breaking free from the oppressor and all that aristocratic stuff in England. But really, the framers were fairly aristocratic themselves, and many of them had mixed feelings about democracy and looked at it like mob rule. So instead of giving the people the power, they were more concerned about giving the people power and then becoming a mob rule against them. But really, they're supposed to be part of the people, right? So there shouldn't be that concern, but they had that concern. So, and just to give a couple of examples, Delegate Edmund Randolph of Virginia warned that none of the state constitutions have provided sufficient checks against democracy. Against democracy. This is their perspective, their frame of mind in the background. You know, you only see the words in the Constitution. You don't know what was, you know, in the background. So also, Massachusetts Delegate Eldridge Gerry said, "The evils we experience flow from the excess of democracy." Father of the Constitution, James Madison, referred to the inconvenience of democracy, and Alexander Hamilton to the, the imprudence of democracy. So that's just to give you some background on what their frame of mind may have been like, you know. All right, so now we want to get into the reasons why they actually chose Electoral College over a direct popular vote. All right, one of the first and most popular reasons is there was a widespread concern with direct election because information diffused so slowly in the late 18th century. They didn't have any national media in which, say, the people from New England would know about the candidates in Georgia, say, for instance, and vice versa, and anything in between. It was just information diffused slowly, and they kind of, within that slowness, created a disconnection from being on the same page, especially compared to what we have today. You know what I mean? So I kind of think that as we look at that, back then it may have been a valid reason. Today it's not a valid reason. Since horse and buggy, we got train, plane, automobile, we got electronic. I mean, I don't see why we couldn't figure some way to vote via social media, email, or some other electronic way to stop all this, you could take a picture saying, holding up who you vote for, and maybe put somewhere your social security number, sit that in somewhere, and have somewhere for them to verify back, bang, just like that. You know what I mean? Things can be done electronically nowadays. It's not the same. So I guess for that point, I'm trying to say it's outdated. It's invalid. There's no reason to think like that anymore. So also in the late 1700s, transport of any of the ballots or the results were relegated to horse and buggy. And, you know, it was slow, going back to that slowness. You can see that being a problem. And also, we still dealing with Indians, you know, and back in the day, or Native Americans. They're not Native Americans, so whatever. The Indians, back in that day, you know, was still warring out with the Europeans here. And they had to worry about, you know, they had to concern themselves with that as an issue. So, yeah, back then, maybe so. But today, we don't have that problem, especially since we can do things electronically. You know what I mean? So, another invalid reason, and moving on to the next reason, the people may elect a radical candidate to office. The electoral system protects the people from this. Personally, I don't know if that was ever a valid reason, because you should know who you're voting for and you have the right to vote. I mean, people shouldn't be saying, yeah, the right to vote, but no ifs, ands, or buts. You got the right to vote, and you should know who you're voting for. If you don't know who to vote for, you just shouldn't vote. You know, so I don't really think that's a valid reason. And the most important feeling I have on that is, you calling me crazy? You calling me dumb? You saying I don't know no better how to take care of myself, so you got to take care of me for me? No, 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 no. That's something everyone should have some sort of fierce resistance against. No, no. You're not smarter than me. You're not better than me. My vote count. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, there should be, maybe the government should put responsibility on itself to inform things a little better if that's what you're worried about, but you can't vote for me, basically. So that was another reason. Another, and I never thought that was valid, and I don't think it's valid now. You know what I mean? So, but definitely not now, because they were slow back then, but definitely not now. Back then, another reason they used, we need the electoral vote, is because smaller states feared that with the direct vote, that they would be less empowered. And you could kind of see that because, I mean, say 100,000 votes next to 20 million votes over here in a large state, you could kind of see, you know, you could kind of see their concern. But we're not voting for state power. We're voting for one national president. So it's about an American citizen. It's not about a state over here citizen and a state over here citizen. So no matter, my vote is this for this one president. I don't see, you know, any reasons to break things down to a statewide matter. No how, no way. The popular vote eliminates all of that. So, but given back then, what was done to placate those people was the Great Compromise during the building of the Constitution. What was come up with was that instead of having, like they have for the House of Representatives now, just everything be direct proportional according to population, and you know, in a House, which is indirect already, right? So we already stepping away from a popular vote. But instead of having just directly proportional to population House of Representatives style voting, they also incorporated the Senate, in which every state gets 2 senators. So that made them feel better about something being done about them not having the power as a small state with lower population. That's another, you know, I personally, I just went over that. You know what I mean? One country, so one vote for one person. The states don't really matter, if you ask me. So another problem that back in those days that was being had about a popular vote, was that the slave states feared being outpowered in elections as well. The slave states were lower in population, so they feared that the rest of the country would say, stop slavery, or, they would be able to put in a position where their concerns would not be dealt with. So also at the Constitution, I don't know if it was part of the Great Compromise or not, but what was done was for the House of Representatives and the proportional votes, the slaves in the South, or the slaves, were allowed to be considered 3/5 of a person, and they counted for 3/5 of a vote, and that placated the masses, the plantation, the slave states. It placated them. You see me right here. You see that shit was never valid to me, and definitely is not valid now. And that's another reason we're gonna move on for that reason. And that's pretty much the reasons right there. Every reason, we go back, we see their frame of mind, we go over the reasons they chose to have an electoral college, and it's arguable then to me. But some of them you can argue be invalid, but that argument is not valid any longer. So I guess I'm putting it out here to kind of it's like that. We need to look at it like that. It's not necessary any longer. We need to know why they had it in there like that, and we need to see that why is not relevant any longer, and let's go on ahead and get this direct vote. Why is the winner of the popular vote losing the election? It's all about some indirectness. Let's just get directed to the point. You know what I mean? So I want to also get to the way it stands now and with the Electoral College. I spoke of it earlier, but it's skewed to favor the smaller states. At the end of the day, it's not direct situation all the way. It's not a direct situation. All right, the fact that there are 2 electors represented in every state, regardless of the population, that's already giving. All right, take away the House of Representatives for a second. Right? We just deal with the Senate. So in the Senate, and I'm going to just say this again in case it got lost. The total number of House of Representative members for the 50 states in D.C. plus the total number of Senate seats for every state and Washington, D.C. comes up to 538, and they make up the Electoral College. Now, there's 100 of those that are represented, or is it 102? Including DC, it's 102. So, out of those 102 votes, it's like you got Rhode Island over here. I don't know the population, but I'm gonna just go with the 100,000 over here in Rhode Island, and you got 30 million in California. I'm freestyling with that stat right there, but we know that's pretty much how it is. It's way little in Rhode Island, millions in California. So that's those 2 electoral votes. Each one of them represent 50,000, say in Rhode Island, and it's going to represent 15 million in California. That makes, in the Senate, Rhode Island is banging them, and basically that's just 2 votes given to a smaller state, not representative of people, actual people there. So that kind of skews things towards the smaller state. Another thing, that limitation of 435 House of Representative reps means that as the population grows, especially in the larger states, the way I see it, people move to cities. I'm going to move to Chicago. I'm going to move to Atlanta. I'm going to move to New Orleans. I'm going to move to, I don't really hear people say I'm going to move to Montana in great bulks and things of that nature. So the 435 limitation. So there's a formula that they use, And as the larger states' populations grow, they're supposed, theoretically they should be getting more representation, more seats. But that 435 limit, they can't get any more. And the votes that they would be getting are going to those states that, if you measure proportionally, those smaller states, they wouldn't even get a whole seat. For House of Representatives, they get at least one seat. Some of these states wouldn't even get one seat if you went by population. That means in Rhode Island, somebody's vote is counting for more, because that 435 limit is not allowing for the representation in these larger states as these larger states' populations grow. That's a skew. All right, so then another one is just the difference in popular votes per electoral vote in any kind of, just the way the structure is set up. In Rhode Island, you add the Senate and you add the House of Representative votes together, and the representation. I think I broke it down earlier. I might be being redundant at this point, but I just think that's the most simplest way to look at it. An Electoral College vote in Rhode Island is worth more of a vote to a person than it is in California, than it is in Georgia, where Atlanta is, than it is in Illinois, where Chicago is, than it is in, say, Florida, where the cities are. So that's the reason why we need to get rid of, we just need to get rid of the Electoral College on the strength of that it's just askew, it's crooked, it's tilted, it ain't right. So that's my show for today. The Electoral College is outdated. We went over what the Electoral College is. You got any questions, hit me up on email. I think I'll leave my email here. You can also leave comments in the YouTube, YouTube comments, or Facebook comment. I post this on Facebook as well. Eazystar Variety Society, have a good night.
Come get it. 4 degree below flow. What's the New York? You know what we're talking about. Under the tundra, the glacier, the iceberg tips. Check it. Yo, Fizz is chillin', Buff is chillin'. What more can I say? Hot penguin, that's what you get. Got it good. 4 degree below flow, rock the hook. Right, 5 degree below flow, rock the hood. 10 degree below flow. Landed in the falls in the disco decade. Mix some reggae, just missed them LK. Great grands on